With more than 17 million square kilometers, Russia is the largest country on the planet. However, that territory was acquired after centuries of expansion and hundreds of wars. To comprehend this great nation's history, we would have to go back in antiquity to the 6th century BC, where the Eastern Slavic peoples settled in the current region of Eastern Europe. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD, the Slavic peoples began to engage in commerce with the Byzantines to the south and the Varangians known as today's Swedish Vikings. The city of Kiev would have been founded between the 5th and 6th centuries as a midpoint on the trade route between both civilizations. That would lay the foundations for the establishment of the first Eastern Slavic state, known as Kievan Rus', after the unification of the Slavic peoples by the Varangian prince Oleg of Novgorod in the year 882. The Byzantine territory influenced the Christianization of Kievan Rus'. It was initiated with the arrival of the missionaries Cyril and Methodius, and officially adopted with the baptism of Vladimir the Great in the year 980. The current Russian alphabet comes from the name Cyril, the Cyrillic alphabet. To date, Russia remains the most influential country in the Orthodox Christian Church. The decline of Kievan Rus' would occur in 1240, after the weakening of the economy due to the discovery of new trade routes, and from these new principalities would emerge that subsequently suffered invasions from the Mongol Empire, called Tatars by the Russians, who founded the Khanate of the Golden Horde, imposing vassalage on the Slavic states. In response to this, a large part of the Slavic population began to gather in the Grand Duchy of Moscow, which gradually gained more strength until in 1368, after the fall of the Mongol Empire. It took the lead in the region, and with this, the foundations of the future Russian state would be laid. From the 15th to the mid-16th century, Russia, the common name of this principality, was ruled by various princes, among whom Ivan III stands out, who won the war against the Republic of Novgorod, another of the states that emerged after the dissolution of Kievan Rus', and later annexed all its territory. This ruler also initiated conflicts with the Khanate of Kazan to Ivan III. He was succeeded by Basil III, who annexed some autonomous provinces, like the principalities of Ryazan and Volokolamsk, and also undertook wars against the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth furthermore. He began actions against the Khanate of Crimea, another Khanate born from the Mongol Empire's collapse. In 1547, the Russian Tsardom would be founded, with Ivan IV the Terrible, who proclaimed himself as the first Tsar. By the way, this comes from the word Caesar, alluding to Russia becoming the next Roman Empire. His contributions were both political and military, and laid the foundation for Russian expansion to the east during the conquest of the Khanates to Siberia, and being the first Russian ruler to cross the Ural Mountains, that is, the first to turn Russia into a Eurasian country. His successors would continue to gradually conquer Siberia as the communities they encountered along the way were increasingly weakened. Until in 1613, Mikhail Brahman of Russia would rise to power, the first Tsar of the Romanov dynasty. And here I throw you a spoiler. The Romanov dynasty would rule Russia uninterruptedly until World War I. In political and military terms, Michael would continue expanding Russian territory into Siberia to the east, but socially, he'd have most of the population living under a system of serfdom, in a situation where if you're born poor, you die poor. In addition, it was illegal for peasants to move freely within the territory or even to emigrate. But what an abuse, right? Years later, Pedro I would rise to power in 1682, nicknamed Peter the Great, who, facing a nation that had technologically and economically fallen behind, gave Russia the status of a world power and founded the Russian Empire in 1721, proclaiming himself as the first emperor. All this thanks to his travels to Western Europe, from where he brought ideas for the modernization of the army and the creation of the Russian naval force. He was succeeded by a series of czars, among whom Catherine II, or Catherine the Great, stands out. After defeating the Ottoman Empire and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, she managed to expand the territory to the Black Sea in the south and Central Europe in the west. In addition to reaching America after officially conquering the territory of Alaska in 1784. Years later, Alexander I would rule, who would face the Napoleonic Wars between 1903 and 1815. Russia's position during these conflicts was initially an ally of France after signing the Treaty of Tilsit in 1807, but Napoleon breaks agreements with Russia and invades it in 1812, being his most disastrous campaign, since despite they reached Moscow, the Russians did not surrender and burned the surrounding fields, so the France perished from hunger and the cold of winter, which ultimately led to the defeat of the Grande Armée. Post the triumph in these wars, Russia was able to annex Finland, Republic of Moldova, and part of the Grand Duchy of Warsaw. Under governments such as Nicholas Bonds and Alexander II, the empire continued to expand through Central Asia, obtaining the territory of present-day Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. This map now closely resembles the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. However, this expansion was halted in the southeast by the Crimean War against the France and United Kingdom, who supported the Ottomans. Considering social aspects, the 1861 Emancipation Reform is notable, in which serfdom would be abolished. Some historians say that this is officially the end of feudalism. Yes, Russia made it extend to this point. During this period, Russia stayed out of the Industrial Revolution and fell behind the Western European powers. With this, the last emperor would come to power, Nicholas II. Some say he was manipulated by the mystic Rasputin, who led Russia into disastrous military campaigns, such as the Russo-Natona War in 1905, and later the entry into the First World War on the Allied side, which left Russia devastated and in a deep political and social crisis. Amidst public and militia dissatisfaction, two revolutions occurred in Russia in 1917. The first in February, where Nicholas was overthrown, who would later be murdered along with his entire family in 1918. And in addition, a prohibitional government was formed that was pressured and excluded by the Soviets or workers' councils, led by radical socialist groups with Marxist ideology. And then the Second Revolution, the one in October, in which the Bolshevik Party, led by Vladimir Lenin, overthrows the Russian Provisional Government and takes power, founding the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic and triggering the Russian Civil War between the Red Army, the Bolsheviks, and the White Movement, the Russian government. This war ends in a divisive victory for the Bolsheviks and also results in the independence of Republic of Poland, Finland, and the Baltic states. In addition, the name is changed to the well-known Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, its more commercial name initially composed of 12 republics. Following Lenin's 1924 death, Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin would take power, better known as Joseph Stalin of Georgian origin. Stalin is one of the most controversial figures in history, as on one hand, he restored Russia's status as a world power, but on the other, he is considered one of the greatest genocides in history, as anyone who dared to contradict the regime was killed. Among his ideas were to recover the territory lost during the Civil War and to expand his communist ideology throughout the world. The world was once again tense in the 1930s, so Stalin signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler shortly before the start of World War II, in which they would divide the coveted territories in addition to dividing Europe into spheres of influence. Both signatories initiated such a bloody event with the invasion of Republic of Poland in 1939. Subsequently, Stalin invades Finland in a disastrous campaign in which he only managed to annex small territories. Given the weakness shown, Hitler takes advantage and breaks the non-aggression pact, invading Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, 1941. Interestingly, something similar happened to Hitler as happened to Napoleon. Despite starting with certain victories that allowed them to advance, the Germans perished in the cold winter and gradually began to retreat. Later, they would be defeated and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics would win the war along with the Allied side, despite having suffered more than 25 million human losses. After this war, the Baltic republics returned to being part of the Soviet territory, increasing now to 15 in number of republics, and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics would expand its sphere of influence through Eastern Europe to German Democratic Republic of Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. This would also be the start of the Cold War between 1945 and 1991, in which the emerged superpowers, the US and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, would start the arms race, space, economic, and above all political, to get involved in various wars during this period in order to expand their respective communist and capitalist influences, among them the Korean War, Vietnam Yom Kippur, among others. After a progressive weakening of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics caused by bureaucratization, technological stagnation, and an internal economic crisis, the Cold War would end in 1991 after certain events, such as the fall of the Berlin Wall. With this, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics would disintegrate with its last ruler, Mikhail Gorbachev, and his economic reform of perestroika, leading to the foundation of the Russia. Boris Yeltsin, the first president. Vladimir Putin succeeded Yeltsin in 2000, a former KGB official, whose first term would last until 2008 and would be re-elected in 2012 to the present. Several analysts say that Putin has once again returned Russia to the status of a world power and has had to face certain separatist encounters such as in Chechen Republic and Crimea. Russia has once again climbed to the world stage, as always. Despite numerous controversies, they're gaining influence in global conflicts like Syrian Arab Republic. So it is said that despite the peace we live in today, we could be prone to witness a second Cold War. What do you think about it? Leave your comment and don't forget to support me with a like. Comment which country you would like me to talk about in my next video and subscribe to my channel to stay updated with more content.